Can anyone hear me?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, let's resume. I have no idea why I got disconnected. Something wrong with the internet. Let me try now. Okay, where are we? So this was we call Vaishnava Manjusha. Manjusha means a casket, and it's meant to be a casket containing jewel-like information about all different aspects of Vaishnavism, devotion service to the Supreme Lord. As per his pledge, Maharaj Nandi submitted a total of 1400 rupees over 7 months, but then ceased giving. A disappointed Srila Saraswati Thakur understood that his enemies had influenced Maharaj, and while lamenting the fickle-mindedness of worldly persons, desisted from pursuing the matter. Yet subsequently, he often praised Maharaj Nandi's open-heartedness and generosity. The Maharaj continued to attend Srila Saraswati Thakur's lectures whenever possible, and was present when Srila Saraswati Thakur conducted the Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Tirubhav Mahotsav in Puri in 1925. For several months after this visit to Kashim Bazar, Srila Saraswati Thakur concentrated on compiling Vaishnava Manjusha based on his 15 plus to contain explanations of obscure words found in Vaishnava texts, brief biographies of prominent devotees, overviews of important devotional writings, genealogical tables of celebrated Vaishnava lineages, descriptions of Vaishnava holy places, the history and teachings of different Vaishnava sects, sampradayas, inventories of books and manuscripts stored in major libraries, descriptions of rituals and temple architecture, and more. Yet the most important feature was to give proper meaning to misused or conventionally misunderstood words. A team of devotees was assembled to help with further research and production, culminating in the publication between 1922 and 1924 of 4 volumes of incompletely sorted and undeveloped materials. Incompletely sorted and undeveloped materials as Vaishnava Manjusha Samahriti. Let me see what this note is about. Vaishnava Manjusha was never completed. Yet much of Vaishnava Manjusha Samahriti was incorporated into Sri Gaudiya Vaishnava Vidvan, an encyclopedic dictionary published in 1957 by Haridas Das, a scholar of Navadvip, whose important services to the Gaudiya world also included salvaging and printing several hitherto unpublished manuscripts of the Goswami literature. In his youth, Haridas had attended some of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's lectures, and he always offered unstinted verbal praise of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Yet, curiously, in Sri Gaudiya Vaishnava Vidvan, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is only cursorily mentioned, whereas some Prakrita Sahajiyas are highly praised. Therefore, Gaudiya Vaishnava Vidvan is to be taken with a grain of salt. But the Manjusha project, it definitely needs to be worked on. Definitely, that's a lot of work. The 5th volume was partially compiled, but under pressure from the caste Goswamis, Maharaj Nandi's monthly donations for this purpose were eventually discontinued, and the torso remained incomplete at the time of Srila Saraswati Thakur's passing away. Samahriti means collecting. Vaishnava Manjusha Samahriti consisted of materials collected for later developing, organizing, and compiling Vaishnava Manjusha. So it actually turned out to be materials for the casket of Vaishnavism. Having taken up work on Vaishnava Manjusha, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati continued to focus on writing, thus producing diverse publications in forthcoming years, gradually gaining assistance in literary work from some outstanding intellectual recruits from August 1922, he was able to float the weekly Gaudiya magazine, which was very important for his mission actually, pioneering in East Bengal. In November 1920, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati inducted his first sannyasi, Srimad Bhakti Pradip Tirtha Maharaj. And on the next day, sent him with 3 colleagues to preach in Dhaka, in the main city in East Bengal. This Bhakti Pradip Tirtha Maharaj was actually initiated by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And then he became a follower of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And then he took sannyas from him. Whereas the majority of Hindus in West Bengal were worshippers of Durga and Kali, traditionally those of East Bengal were predominantly devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Radha Krishna. Even more than their brothers and sisters in West Bengal, East Bengalis tended to be vivacious. How do we explain that? Animated, emotional, and lovers of song and dance. And hence, natural candidates for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. Besides, the geographical isolation of East Bengal had largely insulated its populace from the overt skepticism that had precipitated a Hindu existential crisis elsewhere, especially in West Bengal. So East Bengal remained in its own world. Thus, East Bengal was the prime theater for the Gaudiya Math and would yield a high percentage of its initiated members, including most of its leaders. However, initially, the greatest obstacle in communicating Shuddha Bhakti to East Bengali Hindus was that their natural faithfulness was misplaced, nearly all having been initiated and in the coils of bogus gurus and prakrita sahajyas, fish-eating Vaishnavas, artificial shows of ecstasy, scriptural recitations in exchange for lucre, money, guruship conducted as a business, and myriad, several other contaminations had smothered, had killed the real spirit of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. To contradistinguish themselves, to contrast themselves from all this rascaldom and relieve others from it, Srimad Tirtha Maharaj party declaimed those perversions. Explained those perversions. East Bengal had already been exposed to this new style of Vaishnava Dharma when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati toured there 2 years before. Now that his emissaries, now that his messengers, representatives had returned with an apparent resolve to stay, the professional gurus responded swiftly. They ordered their followers, virtually the entire town, to boycott the discourses of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's disciples and not give them money, food, or even water, warning that doing so would offend their gurus and forefathers and invite untold troubles upon their children. Difficult as it was for people to deny sadhus, they feared, they additionally feared disobeying their theoretical gurus by this subterfuge, by this deceit. The false gurus planned to drive the preachers away and continue their cheating business without interruption, considering the devotees to be an incipient threat, to be a developing threat to their hold on the public, and having no reasonable defense. These misologists, what is a misologist? Okay, my time I need to. What is that? Hatred of argument, reasoning. Like what? I have seen some devotees right inside his car like this. They hate using the brain actually. Prabhupada actually said, when you surrender to Krishna, don't surrender your intelligence. Prabhu, he referred to this once in a lecture. But there are a number of people who cannot tolerate using intelligence at all. Somehow they think that spiritual life means you're supposed to become brain dead. But it looks like this was a long-term problem. It was a problem even during Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's time. Those mythologists would not even discuss with the Gaudiya Math delegates. When one morning, the gentleman hosting the Gaudiya Math men curtly, rudely, briefly told them to leave by afternoon, Tirtha Maharaj dispatched a telegram to Srila Saraswati Thakur to apprise him of the crisis, and soon got the telegraphic reply: if necessary, survive by drinking the water of the Buriganga, but do not stop distributing the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Buriganga is a river there. Srila Saraswati Thakur quickly penned and printed a tract titled A Submission to the Residents of Dhaka, which greatly helped the cause of his embattled representatives. Gradually, the Gaudiya Math voice was heard, and some educated young men of East Bengal came forward to join. In mid-1921, a much publicized controversy helped the Gaudiya Math gain a strong foothold in East Bengal. Atul Chandra Chakravarti, a resident of Dhaka, who initially had strongly opposed the Gaudiya Math preachers, changed his opinion after listening to their discourses and observing their pure habits and dedication. But like many others who respected them as sadhus, he still had reservations. Why did they excoriate? Why did they criticize the K.S. Goswamis severely? The K.S. Goswamis and others who for generations had been spiritual mentors. Actually, and we will come across this later on. The K.S. Goswamis, their view was only certain biological lineages, male biological lineages, only they could give Diksha. Only certain people could give Diksha. If you're born in this family, then you could give Diksha. That's all. No concept that he has to be fully surrendered or you have to consult Shastra. It was not based on scripture properly. So why did they criticize these persons? And also worship Krishna. They also worshiped Krishna, chanted his names, wore tilak, and quoted the same scriptures. To settle these doubts, Atul Babu sent a list of 30 questions to both a well-known Jat Gosai of Navadvip and to Srimad Tirtha Maharaj. Upon receiving answers, he forwarded them for critique to Dr. Dhirendranath Bandhopadhyay, a member of the Vishwa Vaishnava Rajya Sabha. The questions, answers, and Dr. Bandhopadhyay's analysis were compiled as a book called Achar O Acharya. Achar O Acharya. O means and in Bengali. Let me see if I got this. I don't seem to have it. I thought I had it. Its publication was a major step toward convincing educated Bengalis that the Gaudiya Math was bona fide, yet it provoked an outcry from the religious businessmen whom it exposed. The queries pointed to the improper behavior and claims of the K.S. Goswamis. What are the scriptural definitions of Guru and Goswami? How are the Guru lineages from Sri Nityananda and Advaita Prabhu to be understood? Is it acceptable for initiated Vaishnavas to take non-vegetarian food and intoxicants? Is it proper to be remunerated, paid for kirtan performances and scriptural recitations? Do those who distinguish Vaishnavas according to their former caste go to hell? What is the qualification to be a guru? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati next visited Dhaka in October 1921 with the express purpose of instituting a new matha there. Going out daily for Sankirtan in several neighborhoods of the city, he and his followers happened upon a suitable roomy house at 19 Nawabpur Road, a prominent thoroughfare. Inquiry from local people revealed that the building was haunted by a menacing, a threatening ghost, and hence otherwise vacant. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati immediately decided to occupy it. He had never feared ghosts, having witnessed from his early life the power of pure chanting of the holy names in dispelling all macabre elements, all disturbing elements. He soon arranged to rent the property, wherein he inaugurated the Madhva Gaudiya Mutt during Govardhan Puja, 13 October. When on 31 October, he there installed deities of Shri Guru Gauranga. A major festival was organized with profuse distribution of Mahaprasad and a huge Sankirtan procession in the city. Remaining in Dhaka during Kartik, Srila Saraswati Thakur gave daily evening lectures at a Radha Krishna temple, explaining the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam in 30 unprecedented ways. Just a minute. Throughout the month, Tirtha Maharaj and other learned disciples of Srila Saraswati Thakur also discoursed daily at various places in Dhaka city. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had dispatched Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur, Srila Saraswati Thakur also deployed his men door to door to beg alms and speak the message of Krishna at every threshold, at every opportunity, in every place. So previously, it was next to impossible to even speak to anyone. But now they were able to go door to door, preach under the roof of any house. At least that's what Srila Saraswati Thakur wanted to create, such an environment. In the same city where less than a year before Gaudiya Math devotees had repeatedly seen doors slammed in their faces, now everywhere the talk was that Srila Saraswati Thakur had rediscovered Dhaka as a latent second Vrindavan, becoming overwhelmed in an ambrosial flood of Hari Sankirtan and Hari Katha. Many persons approached Srila Saraswati Thakur to seek shelter as disciples at his lotus feet. Although the struggle against placebo gurus, false gurus, was far from over, the Gaudiya Math had clearly made significant gains. 1921 to 23, during the first 6 weeks of 1921, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was bedridden with a severe carbuncle. Nonetheless, he went on discoursing enthusiastically to disciples and visitors. And as soon as the condition slightly abated, he set out for East Bengal. After traveling all day by train and steamer, he rested overnight and was then carried by palanquin to a village for a program of kirtan and lectures. Oblivious to bodily strain, he descanted. He discoursed to the numerous distinguished visitors who came to see him. After 3 days in the village, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati proceeded to Dhaka for 4 more days of intense preaching to members of the learned elite there. Then he returned to Krishnanagar and Mayapur to oversee arrangements for the upcoming Navadvip Dham Parikrama and Gaur Jayanti celebration. East Bengal was all part of British India. Both India was part of British India and East Bengal was also part of British India. It's not like now and Bangladesh, different countries. Notwithstanding his debilitated health, his disturbed health, weak health, Srila Saraswati Thakur's addiction to glorifying Hari could not be allayed, could not be dissipated. And he participated with gusto in the festivities. But afterward, he became afflicted by an old hernia condition, complicated by 7 consecutive bouts of colic pain. And it seemed that at any moment he might pass away. Late in March 1921, he finally acceded. He agreed to disciples' request that he take a break for recuperation to get back his health. On the advice of the foremost Ayurvedic physician in Calcutta, he went with only a few retainers to rest in Bhubaneswar, the water of whose Bindu Sarovar is famed for its therapeutic effects, medicinal properties. Yet the colic pain continued to increase. So in May 1921, he shifted to Puri, where the salubrious, healthy, literal climate, the seashore climate, conduced his eventual regaining of full fitness. On this visit to Orissa, he resolved to establish Gaudiya Math branches at Bhubaneswar, Puri, and Alalnath, which he gradually accomplished in the following years, beginning with founding the Sri Purushottam Math at Bhakti Kuti in Puri on 9 June 1922 by installing a deity of Mahaprabhu. At this new Math, he also inaugurated an annual memorial festival in honor of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Gadadhar Pandit. The annual festival of the Calcutta Sri Gaudiya Math in 1922 began on 23 September, with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati leading a grand Sankirtan cavalcade. Wow, it's a formal procession, right, in Calcutta, through the city streets after a long and hectic day. While the devotees were fast asleep that night, the cry arose as all awoke amid huge flames. Their first concern was for the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's safety. Yet he told them not to worry for him, but to ensure that the deities and his library were protected. Miraculously, everything was saved. No one was injured. All the foodstuff had been collected for the festival remained intact, and no significant damage was incurred. That it was a case of arson, that somebody had set fire, was obvious from the charred bunches of hay strewn around. And even though the blaze soon dissipated, it was purely by Krishna's grace that the fire had not spread. So when we venture forth to spread pure Krishna consciousness, we should understand these things are bound to happen. Somebody is going to set fire, in the literal sense also. But Krishna will always protect. The most significant events of 1923 were inaugurating the construction of the new temple of the Sri Chaitanya Math in March and establishing the Gaudiya printing works in Calcutta in August 1924 to 25. With the 50th anniversary of their savior's appearance approaching, leading members of the Gaudiya Math met to plan a fitting celebration to instruct human society how an Acharya should be worshipped. Ananta Vasudeva Prabhu proposed the title Golden Jubilee to parallel observances held for secular kings, but Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati preferred the Shastriya and Siddhantic name Vyasa Puja. This was the first time the Vyasa Puja was conducted. Accordingly, on 24 February 1924 at Sri Gaudiya Math, the first annual Vyasa Puja of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was conducted, taking a clue from the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavad description of Nityananda Prabhu's worship of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and also from the ancient manuscript Sankshepa Vyasa Puja Paddhati, the concise system of performing Vyasa Puja, which Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had found in the Govardhan Math library in Puri and personally duplicated. Sundarananda Prabhu had recently come across that copy and shown it to Ananta Vasudeva Prabhu. During the ceremony, Vasudeva Prabhu recited for the first time the pranam mantras honoring Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati by succinctly defining his transcendental glories. So these are the 4 verses that Prabhupada had taught us in his ISKCON. On Vasudeva Prabhu's request, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati accepted the title Srila Prabhupada, often rendered simply as Prabhupada. This appellation, this title, was soon adopted as a standard mode for his disciples to address him. Subsequent Vyasa Pujas were observed at different branches of the Gaudiya Math and were memorable gatherings attended not only by disciples but by many appreciative dignitaries of the broader public as well. In December 1924, Srila Saraswati Thakur spoke to the Bengali Association at Benares Hindu University about the position of Vaishnava philosophy in the religious world. Although Benares had long been a seat of learning, particularly of Mayavad, the president of that meeting, Sri M.M. Mahamaha Upadhyay, Pramathanath Tarkabhushan openly admitted that Srila Saraswati Thakur's discourse was too deep for his audience to comprehend. Although Srila Saraswati Thakur's diction, his lecture, was known to be recondite, abstruse, difficult to understand. During his visit in Benares, it became so exceedingly abstruse, difficult to understand, as to be nearly unintelligible even to the numerous resident accomplished scholars. Srila Saraswati Thakur spent a few days there searching for places of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. He then continued with his companions to the various holy sites in and around Ayodhya, Naimisharanya, Prayag, and Adail, a village on the other side of the Yamuna from Prayag that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had visited. As mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Then the party returned to Benares, and Benares is the same as Varanasi or Kashi, and stayed nearly a month, bundling themselves up against weather colder than most Bengalis had ever experienced. Starting on 29 January 1925 and continuing for almost a month, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati took approximately 100 devotees on a tour of Gauranga, the places in West Bengal where Lord Chaitanya and his associates had performed their pastimes. Travel was mostly by train, but often by boat, sometimes in the back of lorries, once on horses and elephants, and miles on foot. During this expedition, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's continuous Harikatha focused on the glories of Lord Chaitanya and his associates, the pastimes performed and the Sripads visited, and the lessons to be learned from them. A murderous attack. Gaud Mandal Parikrama was followed by the 5th annual Navadip Dham Parikrama, during which the smoldering, the burning opposition of the Casco Swamis came to a head, came to a climax. Srila Saraswati Thakur had fearlessly and consistently contested the nefarious practices, the wicked practices of false devotees, such as levying temple entrance fees. Can you imagine that? There used to be temple entrance fees.
There is still, I think, in Navadip, somewhere.
I think still there are some places which temple entrance fees. Performing kirtan and reciting Srimad Bhagavatam for monetary gain and becoming gurus by profession. Furthermore, his propagating that Mayapur was the actual site of Lord Chaitanya's Avirbhav was increasingly harming the business of the temple proprietors of Navadip. The previous year, by organizing a quasi-religious meeting adjacent to the parikrama during its stopover in Pulia, local Casco Swamis had ineffectually attempted to divert attention away from the parikrama, but it didn't have effect. Thereafter, tension between the two parties remained high and conflict seemed inevitable in defiance of the wobbly connection, so terrible that even the dictionary doesn't open. Bit of control panic. Wobbly hegemony, the shaking hegemony. Hegemony means control of the professed Goswamis on 4 March 1925. The Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati again marched into their stronghold, Pulia, along with 600 to 700 followers, including many women, accompanying the small Sri Radha Govinda deities riding on an elephant. After resting at midday in a dharmashala, in the evening, the party reassembled at the spot where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was to lecture. Shortly after the pilgrims arrived, some rowdies showered dust, dirt, gravel cow dung and garbage.
Small
Gravel is a small
stone.
stones. Cow dung and garbage on them, and raucously demanded, loudly demanded, irritatingly loudly demanded that they stop kirtan. A local caste Goswami entered among the group and tried to incite a quarrel, but the parikrama participants sagaciously, like sages, remained calm and to avoid an affray, to avoid a conflict, unobtrusively dispersed into the dusk. They briskly returned to the dharmashala, being jibed at and threatened as they went. So they're being criticized wherever they went. This is wrong. And jibed. Insulted wherever they went. Considering that the parikrama would not be complete without hearing about the pastimes Mahaprabhu had enacted in that locale, the next morning 100 to 200 pilgrims, mostly males, returned to the place where they had been intimidated the previous evening. While Srimad Tirtha Maharaj was lecturing, a gang of ruffians suddenly appeared and pelted brickbats at the elephant's trunk. Parikrama attendees admonished, chastised the aggressors to desist from the offensive act of harassing the deity's mount, the deity's vehicle, and to their surprise, the rogues departed. But minutes later, they returned wielding large sticks, which they had kept ready in proximate shops, in nearby shops. The defenseless pilgrims quickly brought the deities of Shri Radha Govinda down into their midst, thinking that surely these felons, these criminals, would not continue their atrocities in the direct presence of the Lord. Then a well-known rich man of Navadvip drove up in a car and barked out an order, upon which ruthless blackguards lurking nearby, some perched on rooftops, let forth a volley of brickbats. The Mahout quickly maneuvered the elephant away from trouble, but escape was not so easy for the pilgrims. Some found shelter in homesteads, yet most doors remained shut. The few brave householders who dared offer refuge had their doors kicked and beaten on. Some devotees fled down adjacent alleys. Those who besieged local coachmen to transport them were scornfully refused and became further aghast to behold the horse carts loaded with stones as ammunition. The few devotees who tried to fight back were outnumbered and beleaguered. They were attacked. Bhakti Saranga Prabhu was captured, yet remained undaunted, asserting himself boldly, even though threatened to be offered as a human sacrifice on the spot. A few devotees suffered severe gashes and fractures. A youth was knocked unconscious, mridangas and banners were broken, and Kunjabihari Prabhu was robbed of 600 rupees and his winter clothing. But although Navadvip streets became stained by the blood of Vaishnavas, by Lord Nrsimhadev's grace, none were killed. Srila Saraswati Thakur had escaped due to the adroitness, the cleverness of Vinod Bihari Brahmachari, who had entreated a reluctant house owner to give them entry. Therein, Vinod Bihari, being similar in size and appearance to his Gurudev, swapped his white clothing with the red of his Guru Maharaj. With great risk, he then escorted Srila Saraswati Thakur back to Mayapur. The last time that happened was with the Ramanuja. 1,000 years now. When a disciple actually took the saffron of Ramanuja and made him put on white and had him moved away to a safe place. As was later revealed by sympathetic local residents, the dastardly, the wicked attack had been planned by certain caste Goswamis who most grossly offended both the deities and an acclaimed acharya by unconscionably, without heeding to their conscience, hiring criminals to perpetrate violence on pilgrims engaged in peacefully chanting Harinam in a holy place, who should have been received as guests in the sacred dham. This was their rejoinder, their reply to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's exposure of their cheating in the name of Lord Chaitanya. Having no power to counteract his message, they had stooped to the lowest level in trying to stop him. But stop him they could not. The shocked public sided with the Gaudiya Math, and the pilgrimage continued under police protection. The flagitious, the criminal, villainous tactics of the Jata Gosais had backfired, for this incident ineradicably, permanently tarnished their reputation and influence. Overnight, the caste Goswami's opposition to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati lost whatever apparent credibility it previously had. As news of the assault spread throughout Bengal, learned circles protested in magazines and newspapers. 4 days later, Ananda Bazar Patrika quoted an eyewitness. I witnessed the reenactment of what Jagai and Madhai did to Sri Nityananda Prabhu over 400 years ago. Subsequently, the chief police inspector of Navadip was cashiered. Cashiered. Dismissed. And the next year, the Parikrama party was protected by an escort of 36 policemen. Srila Saraswati Thakur mentioned the episode in his commentary on Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. A few days ago in Kulianagar, some persons, with the help of a few fierce miscreants, rather than offering respect, unfairly attacked innocent Vaishnava sannyasis, Brahmanas, and devotee women, all of whom had come to participate in circumambulating the Dham. All these are simply unfavorable activities against the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Dev. However, when urged to make a case against the hooligans, Srila Saraswati Thakur declined, giving the opinion that they had done yeoman service. They had done some very good service. Otherwise, how could the Gaudiya Math have been featured on the front pages of all the newspapers? 1926 to 1930. In June 1926, Srila Saraswati Thakur founded the Sri Sanatan Gaudiya Math at Benares. A local newspaper reported, to the great fortune of Benares, the Math has newly been established, casting aside the rind. Let's see what that is. The tough outer skin of certain fruit, of fruitivats, and the seed of dry wisdom. Wow. The luminaries of the Math are approaching every denizen of the city with the ambrosial substance of the Veda Shastra. Nigama kalpattarod galitam phalam. It is a fruit which has no seed and no tough outer skin. The Acharyas have pointed out. So this is the pure teaching of Srimad Bhagavatam alone. There is no denying the fact that the disinterested endeavor of the devotees will ere long draw out the fallen from dusty oblivion. We are happy to see the mission gaining sympathy daily from all quarters. Another of the several new centers opened that year was in Cuttack, the Sachidananda Math, named after Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod, who for some time had been posted in Cuttack as a school teacher. Srila Saraswati Thakur stated that at the Sachidananda Math, there should be service to the Sachidananda deity, and that it should be a theism research institute. On 22 July 1926, the Utkal Mirror announced, it will be a matter of great delight for the people of Orissa to know that a new Vaishnava Math, as a branch of the Sri Chaitanya Math at Navadip, has recently been started at Cuttack. The well-known Gaudiya Math of Calcutta and the Sri Purushottam Math at Puri are two branches. The Sabha commands service to many highly educated Vaishnavas who are solely devoted to the task of preaching the true Vaishnava religion. Sri Radha Mohan Patnaik, Sub-Deputy Collector, commented, the cult of pure Vaishnavism, with its intense spiritualism, as preached by Lord Chaitanya, was almost declining on account of the degeneration and selfishness of its latter-day followers. Many evils and corrupt practices crept into it, so much so that people were beginning to abhor, they're beginning to hate the very name of a Vaishnava. Thanks are due to the Vishwa Vaishnava Raja Sabha, which has earnestly and vigorously taken up the work of reconstruction and revival, with a view to putting an end to all grotesque, terrible, and monstrous forms of perverted religion introduced by selfish and degenerate pseudo-Vaishnavas. Wow. Already its labors have begun to bear fruit, and it is expected that in the near future, the mission will command worldwide success. The distinguished and devoted band of highly cultured sannyasi preachers who have sacrificed all that is material at the altar of love and devotion are doing excellent work in the field. The visit of Swami Giri to this historic town has been hailed with delight by all seekers of truth, seekers after truth, and his presence and activities have created a stir in the pseudo-Vaishnava world. Since his stay at Sachidananda Math at Cuttack, he has been trying his best to secure the sympathy and cooperation of all communities, irrespective of caste and creed, to make this Math a permanent religious institution in the capital of Orissa for the propagation of the true Vaishnava religion and for dissemination of healthy Vaishnava literature published under the auspices of the Vishwa Vaishnava Raja Sabha. End of quote. Gradually, by the influence of Srila Saraswati Thakur's inspired preaching, several wealthy men came forward to donate for temple construction, some of them also becoming his disciples. Shri Sakhi Charan Rai contributed the entire cost of the mandir at the birth site of Lord Chaitanya in Mayapur. Similarly, Shri Madan Mohan Das Adhikari bore the expenses for the principal temple of the Sri Chaitanya Math at Mayapur. Spiritual discourses were regularly conducted in the adjoining Avidyaharan Saraswata Natya Mandir or Avidyaharan Shravan Sadan. Shravan Sadan means a place of Shravanam. Avidyaharan means that which takes away ignorance, avidya, named both for the devotee who had donated for its construction and for its function of removing ignorance. Saraswata Natya Mandir. Natya Mandir is the Kirtan hall where we dance and glorify the Lord. Saraswata means connected to Saraswati Thakur. The temple and most of the accompanying buildings of the Math in Madras were funded by the Maharaj of Jaipur in Orissa, Dr. Vikram Verma, D.Litt. Its assembly hall was built by Sir Ponnirula Pillai, a contractor of Madras. Okay, I'm going to note that this will be the place. Session. Okay. All right. Any questions? Just a minute. Shailesh.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandava Pranams. Hare Krishna. Prabhu, in between, when we lost the connection, I was out for a couple of minutes trying to get back in again when I missed a little bit of the narration you were giving on when the funding requirement for the Manjula Vaishnava Manjula was being requested from the Maharaj, and that Srila Prabhupada requested 3 lakh rupees, and you were saying you got cut off then. So I missed the bit. So that funding for the 3 lakhs, which in today's
it did not come. How much
but
would
in
that
today's
have been?
terminology, that would have been hundreds of millions, if not billions. Well, it was a significant amount. Is there any narration as to what Srila Prabhupada had in mind for doing with that? Why it was such a colossal budget?
It was meant to be an encyclopedia. It was meant to be an encyclopedia in great detail about different Vaishnava lines, the terminologies they used, about their manuscript libraries, their books, prominent devotees. Meant to be a detailed encyclopedia.
Okay, and the funding did come through, but on a smaller scale with monthly or something.
And stopped
because I missed all of that. So.
Yeah, and it stopped after some time. It was just
so
The Maharaj
the
couldn't
project
even
didn't
fathom
progress
it.
very
It's-
much then.
Yeah, it stopped within a few years. They had only they came up with 4 volumes of materials for Vaishnava Manjusha. That's all. They couldn't even come up with the Vaishnava Manjusha.
It sounded like a significantly potent project that I wonder if we anywhere in
Yeah, I think
ISKCON are
that
looking
what
to
we should do in
take that
today's
up.
world is we need to come up with some kind of Vaishnavapedia, some kind of not something like Wikipedia, but it should be based on evidences. It should be scholarly. It's not that anyone should not be allowed to just write whatever they want. But I think that
Is that
if
a
you-
project being sort of toyed with in the Mayapur Institute or anywhere within kind of the ISKCON ranks that you're aware of?
How much of funding? No, I cannot even think about unless someone bequeath us, some gigantic.
No, but has it been even discussed, or is it even a potential project that is being discussed?
No,
Or
not right now. Right now, we are thinking of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's curriculum, and even in fact, we are only thinking of the primary textbooks in his curriculum. There are 10 divisions in his curriculum, and for each division, there are primary textbooks and secondary textbooks. And right now, we are only thinking of the primary textbooks, and we ourselves are trying to figure out how courses on these can be set out, because these books are meant to be studied in the original languages, not through translations and all that.
And one more quick question. Forgive me, I've lost the timeline here somewhere in the narration. So we are currently discussing
1926.
where in the timeline are we?
1926 or something like that. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is preaching in Orissa and so on. 1926, 27, something like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Prabhuji. That was it.
Okay. Anything else? Nothing. If you have further questions, you can bring it up in the Telegram group. Vanchakalpatarubhyasya kripasinubhyo vacha paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha.